I'm Stephen Kimball. I'm the lead pastor at Grace City Church. We were in our first year and had the opportunity to hear Bill Hull speak locally. And everything he said was in line with what our church was trying to do and our vision. And so he mentioned this thing called the Bonhoeffer Project. It didn't give me a program. It didn't give me a plug-and-play class. It enabled me to wrestle with what disciple making, what discipleship looked like in our church and in our context. And so throughout that process, I was able to really work and continue to hone a system that our church could own, something that wasn't just from another church across the country or a big church context, but it actually fit our context and would work to make disciples.
So welcome. We are so glad that you guys have all joined us today. And so what we want to talk about with Stephen and Bill is implementation. We know that many of you are, I recognize your names, so I know you're part of our tribe. And so I'm excited. That's what we're here for, is to give you some encouragement and some tips and tricks that are going to help you, hopefully, to be able to engage better with your discipleship flow process. So I'm going to ask these guys some questions along the way. I'm going to ask them to each answer. And if you have questions, you can put those in the chat box and we will see those. And we're going to have a Q&A time when we get to the end. So are we ready? Bill, Stephen, ready? All right,
Ready.
Here we go.
Ready.
All right. What did you find encouraging about the cohort process? Bill, you want to take this one first?
Sure.
All right.
It's hard to boil it down to one particular thing, but it was life-changing. And the encouraging part was I found something that I was yearning for. I was dissatisfied with how the American church was operating, how I was operating. I believed that I cut my teeth in young life, earned the right to, through relationships, to share the gospel. And so this was what I was wanting. And when I went to Nashville to the Discipleship Conference, I went through all of the breakout sessions for the Bonhoeffer Project. By the second one, I said, I'm doing this. And one of the many encouraging things about it was that it was contextualized. It wasn't somebody was giving me their program. Stephen mentioned that. This was contextualized to our culture. We're a 100-year-old church. And that's a different than a plant or something like that. So it had to fit our context. So that was encouraging. I was looking for something like this, and just the cohort vibe that was going on, where we would work on our projects and to come in, and then somebody else would say something that, oh yeah, I got to take that fits with mine. And it was like a bad joke. You had two Baptist ministers. I'm from the Church of God Wesleyan branch, and then there was a guy who was Church of Christ who played a guitar and wasn't supposed to because they were non-musical, and then non-instrumental. And then we had a Guatemalan missionary guy who was doing an orphanage. I mean, so I got perspectives that I would have never dreamed I would. So I'm, the guy from Guatemala, is when his feed wasn't cutting in and out, he was like, well, yeah, I'm going to start with the nannies that are nannying these kids. I was like, oh yeah. Right. And so there was just so much encouraging about it. And the leaders that we had were just, they just kept nudging and pushing us in that iron sharpening iron. And it was just a fabulous experience.
Awesome. Stephen, how about you?
Yeah, I think of two things that come to mind. The first is that the cohort experience itself, I love the fact that it gave me 10 months to sit in discipleship and to think on it and
So it wasn't like a 2-day weekend where I get all pumped up about making disciples and a system to do it. And then okay, I'm out there on my own. It was 10 months of sitting in this and thinking on it so that it became a part, even more a part of my DNA. And as I'm going through it, I'm just kind of spilling all this over into our staff and our people and our leaders. And so it's becoming a part of their DNA. And I think that 10 months of allowing it to become really a part of who we were, it was great, rather than us picking up something for a little while and trying it and then casting it aside. So I would say just the fact that we sat in it for 10 months was huge. And then the other thing, I'm going to piggyback on what Bill said. We didn't talk about this and we didn't plan this, but I completely agree that the customized approach of what the Bonhoeffer does is what's so valuable. Everybody knows there's a million silver bullets out there, right? Like, hey, do you want to make disciples? Do this. If you want to make disciples, do this program. But Bonhoeffer says, okay, what's your context? Let us give you some guide rails to guide you, and we'll go through this process. It's proven, and we'll help you build something that works in your context. And so for us, I'm on the opposite end of the spectrum as Bill. We're a brand new church plant. We're in an area that most of our people that live in our area are young professionals. They were in the business sector. They travel a lot with their jobs. They have kids. So their schedules are incredibly packed. And so for us to just say we're going to plug and play anybody's discipleship system wouldn't work. But we were able to craft a piece of our discipleship flow plan that specifically fit those men and women that have crazy schedules. We were able to customize it to fit them and produce a model that worked for us and has worked for us over the last 3 or 4 years. And so, yeah, that customizable approach that says we're going to make disciples in your context. That was I think one of my favorite pieces of what Bonhoeffer does.
Okay, sounds good. So keeping going with that, you've gotten through your cohort. You're now 3 or 4 years down the line in this process. So when you made your discipleship flow plan, what was your expected timeline? Like, we all have an idea, okay, this is how long it's going to take here, and this is how long here and here. What was your expected timeline, and how long did that actually take?
Well, I don't know where I got this number. I'll blame Bill. I'll say he said it, but I just thought in terms of 3 to 5 years, and that's just not normal. That's not a very American. You should be able to do it quicker. But that was what I looked at, was that we were gonna layer this thing out. And one thing I think, I'm pretty sure Bill said this, or one of our leaders, you don't eat an elephant in one bite. And this was going to take some time, and it's playing out to be about what we thought it would be, in the 3 to 5 years.
Okay. All right, Stephen, what about you?
Yeah, how long did I think it was going to take? As a church planner, I think you always think really fast, right? Like, man, in 6 months, this is going to be fully functioning, and so I think on one side, I got that piece of me, but I think, like Bill said, throughout the process, I think Bill and the cohort, whoever your leaders are, do a good job of casting vision where you do come out of it knowing we're going to see some immediate results, but we're really playing the long game here. And this is like Bill said, a 3 to 5 year investment. And then even beyond that, you're looking 10, 20 year where you start getting some crazy compounded interest on your disciple making efforts. And that's where I think it's going to get really exciting. But for us, as far as the results we saw, I would say definitely in that first year, we did see some immediate results. One of the things I remember Bill saying is, don't announce the revolution, start it. And he had another quote where he says, start small, dream big. In other words, don't come out and say, everybody's going through our new discipleship plan. Great way for it to fail, right? And so we took his advice. and we started small. And, you know, one area with a specific group of men, we started really small, just working with those men over the course of a year. In the back of my mind, I'm like, oh man, we got to get this to everybody. But at the same time, we stuck with it. And that came from just some of the coaching from Bonhoeffer. And I mean, honestly, I can look back now and say, okay, that first year's group of men, they're the leaders in our church. Also, my wife did a group of ladies. They're also leaders in our church. And they're the ones that over the last couple of years have discipled other people. So we saw some immediate results, but what we're starting to see now is where it's starting to get really exciting, and the patience is paying off.
Yeah, we had, as I implemented with my ladies ministry at our church, we had the same kind of thing. We had some immediate results, but we're now beginning to see third and fourth generation multiplication.
Mm-hmm.
That's when it gets exciting, because you know it's now become the DNA for the people around you, as well as for you. And so that's, in my mind, that's some of the most exciting stuff that we can be a part of in God's kingdom, is just establishing that DNA in the people and then in the church. So that's exciting. So Stephen,
yeah, let me throw in one more thing, is that that the idea that movements start small. And if we were looking at, we didn't just want to, this is something for our church. No, this is about exportation. This is about, we want to be a part of a disciple making movement, not a program for the church. So we're willing to celebrate as people are being disciples in different layers of the plan that's being put out. But yeah, we're playing the long game, and it's a slow burn. It's not a flash. If we want, if we want immediate gratification, this is probably not the path to take.
It would not be the path to take. I heard Bill one time at a conference say that discipleship is the best church subtraction program out there. So just knowing that some people just don't want to, right? So it brings me to my next question. Stephen, tell me what some of the challenges you faced as you implemented your DFP. Tell us about some of that.
Yeah, no challenges. It went perfect, right? No.
You lie. We're not supposed to lie, Stephen.
I know. Yeah, I think, again, ours were different than a more established church. I'm sure Bill's going to have probably a completely different set of challenges, but for us, they really came more in the form of distractions. Being a new church, I went through Bonhoeffer right after we had launched, and so we had a lot of distractions. I've boiled them down to two. I think one, I would say, kind of the tyranny of the urgent. And I know every church faces that, but being a new church plant, we had a successful launch, and by church plant standards, things were going well, which means you just got a lot to do. And we were trying to figure out, we had a lot of systems we had to get in place, we're trying to make sure we were doing everything legally correct and, financially and all those things. We also had, all these people we're trying to assimilate, and people were trying to get to know, and leadership to put in place. So we had a lot of just things that were pulling on us that were urgent and good things that needed to be done. But, that was ultimately, sometimes that was pulling against, trying to get the culture of discipleship in place and structures and those kind of things. So I would say the tyranny of the urgent was one. And then the other one for us was just that pull to just focus on numbers. And I know every pastor, minister faces that, especially being a new church plant. It seemed like every conversation I had with another pastor, every conference I went to, back pre-COVID when we would go to conferences, every conversation I had was, how's your church doing? And the next question was, how many you got, right? How many people do you have? Because that's the golden standard of success. And so always feeling that pull in that direction, I think was a definite distraction for us to try to make sure we stayed the course and implementing our DFP and making sure we're focusing on making this culture of disciple making for the long term. So yeah, distraction, I think, was our obstacle.
Okay. Bill, what about you?
Well, yeah, it is a distinct difference in a 100-year-old church. But one of the biggest challenges was just, we talked about being resolute. This is the hill we're going to die on. We weren't going to be seduced by crowd. That's one of the things I learned is Jesus was suspicious of the crowd. And so we talked constantly about this. We need to be resolute. That's just putting your shoulder to it and keep moving. And part of that being resolute was that, do I really believe that this is the Jesus way? Not the Bonhoeffer project or what Eagle Ridge is doing, but making disciples a few at a time and multiplying. Do I really believe that? Because if I don't, I'm not going to be resolute, and we're not going to be resolute, because there's plenty of muscle memory. And I coach tennis at our local high school, and you're changing muscle memory to have a young man hit the ball properly. We have a lot of muscle memory as pastors of what we've been taught, the Kool-Aid we've drank, as far as how the American church works. So there was a ton of unlearning before learning, and just with that resolute, having a timeline, even though those are, you shoot holes in it and you start over, but that gives you a sense that, we're not going to be in a hurry. And with an established church, we also had the attitude of, one of our challenges was things that just obviously don't fit, that they've been there. And kind of, we took the path of, we made some mistakes in this area, but we mainly took the path of, don't squash it, just don't feed it anymore. Let it die a slow death, as opposed to, blowing something up and then people get confused and, oh my gosh, this is another program they're installing or whatever. And then the challenge of, because you're established church, you get to see who's really in. Oh, that's going to happen, brothers and sisters, because, recently during COVID, some longtime members came in and said, we're leaving, we don't agree with you, with what you're doing with masks, and you're not taking a political side, and all you do is talk about discipleship. I said, well, that's the command. And they said, oh yeah, Great Commission. Like, the Great Commission was a side thing, and they wanted me to yell about these other things. And so, those are people that were several generations in our church. Love them, but you're going to find out who has the stomach to be resolute, because this takes some time. And we got to figure out, and there was a whole lot more that had that were resolute and had the stomach, had the ability to delay gratification when other churches in town are saying, look at our numbers. We had enough people that said, no, this is, Bill, we've been, I heard people saying, Bill, you've been talking about this. Go take your 10 months. Let's get going. Let's get going.
Yeah, it's good. It's a good word. So what did you guys find encouraging as you were implementing, right? So you look at the challenges, but what was encouraging to you? Because I think it's good for us to weigh both sides of any process that we go through. So what was encouraging as you were implementing your DFP? Which one of you wants to take that? Stephen?
Yeah, I'll go. By far the most encouraging thing for me is seeing life change. I think that's what all of us get into ministry for, right? Because we want to do what we do to, be pleasing and honoring to God, first and foremost, but ultimately we want to make a difference in people's lives and see, families change. And so definitely for me, having a front row seat to that, it has been fantastic, and seeing that life change. I'll share a quick story about a guy specifically during that first year. Just, again, in one of the components that we implemented, we try to make sure that, kind of like what Bill was saying, it's not necessarily a program. In some instances, it can be that, but you're injecting disciple making in every facet of your church is what you're trying to do. And so, but one of the things in the men's group, that first initial group that we started with, there was a guy named Ed Chan, who's a local guy, owns his own company, very successful. And I really felt like he needed to be in that first group. And I invited him to it. At first he told me no. And then he told me maybe, then he came back and told me no. And then 2 days before we started, he said, I'm in. And we had people, they signed a covenant. I mean, it's for 9 months and it's pretty high bar stuff that they would be required to do and be involved in it. So he was very hesitant to get in that group, really had just been a believer for maybe a year and a half. And sharp guy, but just not a lot solid foundation with his faith. He got in the group and ended up just loving the group, ended up growing by leaps and bounds. I mean, and just taking some of the stuff we were learning and implementing them immediately in his family. I mean, just big things that just started changing in his family without us saying, you need to do this. He just started picking them up and making those changes. Loved it so much and grew so much. The next year we invited him to lead a group and co-led a group with another guy and found a passion for investing in other men. And loved it. And so anyway, Ed just keeps growing and growing and growing. Finally, to the point the next year, so year 3, I came to him and said, Ed, man, you've got such a passion for this. God's done so much in your heart for this. What if you just oversaw this entire section of our discipleship flow plan? Like, what if this was yours? And so Ed's been doing that for a year and a half. And honestly, what's exciting about it is like he's doing a better job than I was doing with it. And, now he's emailing me and sending me updates on it. And I'm still involved in it. But seeing guys like Ed and then a guy like Andrew, who, overcame some issues in his marriage and addictions and those kind of things, that's what's encouraging to me is when you see what comes out of it. We're not just doing systems and processes here. We're seeing people's lives change. So definitely life change, most encouraging thing by far.
That's awesome. Bill, how about you?
So many things came to my mind, but one of the really encouraging things early on in the process was I found other people who were discontented.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't, and that just fueled me because, nobody wants to think you're a nut job and you're the only one that's thinking that the emperor has no clothes on. And I know I'm mixing metaphors there. Sorry, I do that sometimes.
Okay, but I like the emperor has no clothes. That's good. I've used that before recently. So
yeah, it's a good one. It plays. It'll preach. But so that was really encouraging. Was I found other people that weren't happy with what the American church was about. Yeah. And so those early adopters that jumped in and said, let's go, let's do this. I'm with you on this. That encourages. That encouraged me a lot. I was encouraged by learning as we established. We had a culture with our leadership that I'm allowed to bring half-baked things and say, I'm gonna throw this out here on the table. And I want you to hear what you have to say. And we got a group of leaders that I can do that with. And so things like one of our main vehicles really transformed in some of the tools that we are going to use with that main vehicle, what we call our builder cohort, which is our multiplication part of our DFP. And that changed. And it wasn't, so that is encouraging that we could grow and learn, and we have that. The leaders here give me that ability. One of the super encouraging things was being challenged to establish gospel clarity. And that was just pounded into us. And so we did a series of preaching series and teaching series that followed the path of the book, The Discipleship Gospel. And that was transformational for our church. Again, I was encouraged because people are going, yes, I didn't know that when I was going, the gospel, people are going, yeah, I know what that means. and so it was really encouraging I mean, we had a fella in our church, Stephen talking about these growth stories. We had a fella in our church that, at times in the past could be a bit of a curmudgeon, and he goes down to Florida, and he's teaching gospel clarity in a prison ministry in Florida.
Wow.
Now that's nothing to do. That's like, that's mobilization right there. That one he just did it. We didn't train him. He just went and did it. But that was so encouraging that now I know that we know what we're talking about when we say the gospel, because I was always confused. People talk about the gospel. Yeah, that's Jesus. Okay. And then people talk about discipleship. And again, I would go, yeah, I know what you mean.
Right.
So everybody had a plan for it, but nobody told me what it was. And so that was super encouraging. And, one of the most encouraging things is when I got into this, I was like, there's nothing wrong with you. I thought there was something wrong with me because I couldn't do the church thing like other people and grow a church. Now I know it's a blessing that I stink at attractional ministry. I'm just terrible. Stephen, I would be the worst church planner in the history of church. I would be in a corner crying and it would be all over, and that would be it. But I found out there's nothing. I was made to, God created, that's why I was attracted to Young Life. God created me to be a disciple maker. And I was like, oh, I can do that and be a pastor. Who knew?
Look at that.
So that's the way that, and obviously I am encouraged because I became more animated as I went, and I'm German and we typically don't do that.
So yeah, it is exciting. Just for me, hearing stories of life transformation for your people in your church context, it goes even further though. Stephen just recently finished a cohort that had a man from Argentina, and now God has moved the Bonhoeffer's discipleship process into that place where they get to step back and really look and deconstruct the Western gospel that we've landed in their space and re-engage the kingdom gospel. And so God is moving in that space and in Cameroon, and just a person here and a person there engages with the Bonhoeffer project. And we're now in the process of looking at Korea and Russia and India and places that we never thought, wow, this is a process that everybody needs, because we have taken some of our bad gospel to other countries. So it's exciting just seeing that happen and seeing life change happen across the world. And this is that start small, start slow, right? Bill started with one cohort. I think he said he had 6 guys in the first one. And from there, God is just moving and creating disciple makers. So one more question here, and then we're going to go to some Q&A. Richard's put in a couple of questions, so I want to get to that. If you have questions, don't forget to drop them in the chat box. How have you personally grown as a follower of Christ throughout this process? Like, what's it done for you and your heart and your faith walk with God? Stephen, why don't you start?
Yeah, I think for me, when you see life change take place, I think you're reminded of a couple of things, or at least I was. One of them, I think I was you're reminded constantly that the gospel works. I think that, the longer you go in ministry, there's obstacles we all face. I mean, good night. We just went through, or we're still in this pandemic and a year of racial crisis and political crisis. I mean, you name it, we had it all in 2020. And it's easy to just get beaten down, and you're always, climbing an uphill battle. And so there's all these things that can come against you, right? Be discouraging. But I think when you're not just overseeing a system, but you're in the middle of it and you're making disciples and you just get a front row seat, to seeing life change. It's a reminder that the gospel really works. And, that's why Paul said, I'm not ashamed of the gospel, because it really does. It works. I don't have to add to it. I don't have to tweak it, make it more palatable. It just is what it is. And when a person really understands it, it begins to change their life. So I think there's that aspect for me that I've been reminded of that has been encouraging, and my confidence in the gospel has grown. But then also I would say that just seeing how, what the Bonhoeffer Project, what Bill calls the ways and means of Jesus, the way about that he went about making disciples, rather than having this canned approach, this, kind of assembly line where, we crank them in a class and, we spit out disciples in 8 weeks. Rather than doing that, this kind of handcrafted approach to disciple making, this life on life, relational disciple making, there's just something about getting back to that and seeing how it really works, and the way Jesus set it up really was the best way, and it really does make disciples that hang in there for the long haul, and then replicate that in other people because they're just doing what other people have done with them. And I think for me, and I would say for our church and our staff, it's just, again, it's built our confidence in the gospel. It's rebuilt our confidence in just the way and means that Jesus went about doing things. So I would say for me, those are some of the things that God's really taught me over the last few years.
Okay. Bill, what about you?
Yeah, just to jump right into the same stream, a lot of it is about confidence. I'm a thinker by nature, and I can talk myself out of stuff pretty quickly. And just that confidence in the gospel, and that, you went through a process, you allowed God to speak to you through his word, through these other men in my cohort, through our leader. So trust that, and put your shoulder to it. But it also, what it changed in me was, I have 2 boys at home. One's back from college, and it said, I've got to have any credibility, I've got to start there. So even before I knew the DFP was done and I knew what I was doing, I'm going to do something that I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to do it anyway. And so I had to get after being, establishing time and being with my boys. And I didn't get to do that with one son who's passed away, and I got 2 left. So I've got to do my best, or I don't have any credibility. And it also gave me the other things that God put into my personality. It all, I like to work out in public, in restaurants and places like that. And even though I'm an introvert, I like to do that. And now that's just where I go to find those persons of peace. Who's moving toward me? Who's asking questions? There's a fella named David, who is a friend who I met at Burger King, who I wouldn't meet him in a million years. We're in different worlds, and we text back and forth. He's got some issues that I understand, and so we text to one another. It put my ego in check, because sermon and Sunday morning wasn't the be all end all. Oh, it's a part of it. Yeah. But but when people sit there, we don't have a big church. If there's 200 people there listening to you, oh, that feels really good. That's like candy right there. And anybody who's done it knows that's seductive, having people go, ooh, I'm listening to you. That wasn't the be all end all for me anymore. And I grew in my ability to spot who should be discipled. It wasn't the usual suspects. It wasn't because you were there 20 years. Sheila, a lady in our church, is in our first. We're about ready to start our 2nd generation of our builder cohort, our application aspect. And Sheila was in our generation 1. Sheila's a grandma who works at Target, and the 20-somethings that work at Target who don't have any clue what they're doing with their life love her. She's had a head injury.
Mm.
I wouldn't have picked Sheila in a million years 5 years ago. But I thought, Sheila, you are gonna, she does her spiritual gifts test and she comes out wisdom. I don't have wisdom. Yes, you do. Because all these kids that don't know what they're doing with their life, they come talk to you in your department because you've got wisdom. I wouldn't have picked Sheila. I wasn't that smart. I would have gone with somebody who, so it's not about 20 years and all that. And the other thing that, you know, that I've seen in my, is I'm willing to take chances with other things because I'm confident in disciple making. We opened a nonprofit coffee shop in a mall that gives the coffee away free. What a stupid idea. You know, but we had confidence because it's based on disciple making. Now all the ladies that clean the mall, again, folk that I wouldn't meet necessarily, we're going to be starting, Deb's going to be starting a group with them. Because all the cleaning ladies come there. You know, the guy who's sort of homeless, who wears his Confederate flag baseball cap, is now doing sound at our other campus. And I had the confidence to do that because this we've got settled. You know, starting a new campus from a church that was dying in the middle of a pandemic. It's not bragging because it's just a bad idea unless it's God's idea. But I wouldn't have had confidence to take those risks if I wasn't settled on that hill that we're going to die on. And that is relational disciple making, disciples making disciples to the third and fourth generation.
That's pretty cool. And just so you guys know, what Bill has done is he is systematically sending his staff one at a time through the Bonhoeffer project so that they can work it out for themselves in their context. And it's really cool just talking to his staff and understanding that his church foundational underpinning is this whole discipleship process, but he also understands that each area has a bit of a different flow process and how that works and reaches the people. So it's a perspective changer, right? That's what I hear you saying, Bill, is it's a perspective changer, which I think in the American church, we all need a change in our perspective to go back to understand the sovereignty of God. And if this is what he told us to do, this is what he will do. And this is the piece that he will bless beyond measure for time on end, right? So I want to give just a minute longer for people to put questions in. Crystal, would you show us, we've got a testimonial video that I'd like you guys to see. And Crystal will share that with us, and then we'll come back and get to a couple of these questions. I want to honor your time today. I told you we'd be done in an hour, and in an hour we will. So.
Hey everyone, my name is Pastor Dan Lights, and I'm the senior pastor at Calvary Chapel Oceanside in sunny Oceanside, California. I wanted to take a second to let you know that my experience with Bill Hull and the Bonhoeffer Project was nothing short of amazing. If you're looking to develop and to make your church into a disciple-making church and culture, you really need to understand what's behind it. I think so many of us can find a program and just slap a name on it or a logo and say, hey, we're going to do this for a little while. But as programs go, there's a beginning and there's an end. But if you're looking to make a culture of disciple making, this is what you want to do. You want to go in with open mind and open heart and an open Bible to say, God, how would you implement this in our context and in our culture? And so the Bonhoeffer does that. Bill has been phenomenal as a mentor. He's been phenomenal as a sounding board for ideas and thoughts, and really is a guide to help make you and your church the disciple-making leader and culture that God has called you to be. So grateful for it. Thank you for listening. God bless you.
All right. Dan leads a church, went through a cohort that Stephen led. And so you're seeing some generational pieces happening there. Just exciting stuff. Love what God is doing in his church and in his heart. So Richard asked this question, what is your end product? What does a fully devoted disciple look like to you?
I'll jump in on that. We just have a very simple definition. Somebody who's following Jesus, being changed by Jesus, and committed to Jesus' mission. And that's not particularly clever. I think that came out of the Discipleship Movement. I'm not sure who wrote that, but I looked at a number of, and that gives three categories that obviously you can teach through and maybe more specific. But the obviously the thing that where the rubber meets the road in our culture is the being changed by and joining Jesus' mission. I mean, that's the joining Jesus' mission's part. That's the part that's been missing. We have programs and services and things that we hope by default will make disciples. And then the people are merely, very simply, need to stay in their lane, do the inviting, and leave the heavy lifting to the professionals. And that, I think I actually threw up in my mouth while I was saying that. But that's what. So that's our end product. We have it up on the wall. Again, that's not anything clever, but we are, as the children of Israel, prone to wander. So we put things on the wall and put things in different places to make sure, like our gospel definition, to make sure that we don't forget.
Stephen, how about you?
Yeah, that's good, Bill. I'd say ours is pretty similar. We kind of have a viral short definition, then more descriptive, and for us, a disciple is someone who trusts and follows Jesus. That's our short definition, which means a disciple maker is someone who helps someone trust and follow Jesus. And then our more descriptive, kind of picture of a disciple is a disciple loves Jesus, listens to the words of Jesus, obeys Jesus, surrenders to Jesus, walks in faith with Jesus, and then loves others like Jesus. So that's kind of the short, and then the long of what we're going for.
It's good to have a target. If you don't have a target, you won't hit much of anything, right? I always think about a shotgun blast, and stuff just scatters everywhere. And there's really, if you don't have a target, you're not going to get what you're going for. So thank you for that. Doesn't have to be complicated, right? I think sometimes we, especially in the American church, I think we try to complicate things. Don't you? You guys agree with that? We want to make it big and grandiose, and it really was very simple. Come and follow me, right?
Yeah. So, Bill says, don't invite other people into your confusion.
Right.
So get clarity on it first, and then
you can invite some people in. So, and if the more that we bring it to that place of understanding the simplicity of the Christian walk, I think the more appealing we are to people as we are winsome, as Christ was winsome in that place. Richard also asked, could you guys share a quick overview of your plan? I don't know if it's possible to share a quick overview of your plan.
I can say this without going into too much detail. For us, Cindy, we really, our plan kind of splits into two different sections. I'd say our first priority is like the organic side, where we want to create a culture of disciple making, where we believe that the best way to change our community is not going to happen on a Sunday, but it's going to happen Monday through Saturday as our people are going out filled with the Holy Spirit as disciple makers in their places of work and their neighborhoods. And so we really want to try to build a culture of that. And, we do that through, the things that we celebrate, the stories we tell, what we measure, all those kind of things. And so that's our main thing that we really focus on. But then we also have a structural side to it, which would include for us our small groups, and then even, our serve teams that we try to inject with some disciple making intentionality, and then the mentoring groups that I mentioned earlier, where we have men and women's mentoring groups. And so all of that would be a part of the plan, but it's really a organic side and a structural side to it.
I like that you bring in that there's a structural piece. Without that, I think we kind of lose traction in some places, and it's easy for us to get lost if there's not a good pathway, right?
Yeah, and I would just say, as I'm a millennial, technically. I'm on the older side of millennial, but we lean more to the organic side. And that's where coming into the Bonhoeffer project helped me. When Bill kind of just told me plainly one day, he said, you need some more bones to your plan. You need some more structure, and without becoming programmatic. And he was right.
Yeah. And that's a fine line, right? And that's
Mhm.
part of what we do in our cohorts in the Bonhoeffer project, is help you figure out where that line is between full on organic and there is no structure, and full on structure and it's all a program. And so there is that space in the middle that says, no, we can do this in a way that brings it relational and intentional all at the same time. That might preach. I might have to write that down.
Yeah.
Bill, what about you?
Well, our for lack of a better term, mission statement is be a bridge, build a bridge. And we're ambassadors for Christ. That's a human bridge. When we're disciples, we are going to be ambassadors. And then as a body, we are going to strategically build bridges into our community. So our picture is a bridge. Any linear explanation, eventually, it's not the perfect way to describe it, but we have some key vehicles that do different things. Different parts of preaching now has its place. Our bridge groups, we encourage people to come out of the group, come out of hiding, come out of the shadows of the big group on Sunday and get into a relational environment, which there's no fancy curriculum. It's based on the sermon and discussion on the sermon, and then we those groups drive people into service areas of service, and we really try to focus on, because it used to be, service was, okay, what can I train these people to do for us in our programs? We just said, no. If you go do something that does absolutely nothing for us, great. If you continue in the worship team, great. Doesn't matter. You don't belong to us. Well, we want to be ascending church. So we get them involved in ministry, and then we have a process that Tammy is using to help people define their calling clearly, so that, again, we can be ascending church. They can have a clarity on what their unique be as created, their unique do, what they're to do, and their unique where they're to do it. And so, and again, if that benefits the organization, great. If we send them, great. God will take care of us. And then our final piece is the multiplication part. Those are called builder cohorts. Those are smaller, and that's where it's that intimate level that we talk about, where and we do ours, men with men, women with women, and it's 3 to 5 people, and that's to be in one of those. You're going to commit to at least 6 months together, and you're going to commit to multiply. You're going to be looking for those persons of peace, those people that are moving toward you and toward Christ. And the idea is that on one side of our bridge, you're drawn. We're always working with people that are drawn, and the other side is released. Nice. They're again, if they go to someplace else, if they do something in their community that doesn't directly affect us, that's not my business, and God will take care of us here at the home base, and we'll be fine. So that's kind of what ours looks like.
Awesome. In a nutshell. All right, so we are just about out of time. I want to leave them with one last thought from each of you, and then Stephen, I want you to tell us about what's coming up in your world. So the last question I have for you is, what advice would you give people who are on this call? We have some folks who have engaged with us in a cohort. I see some of our alumni on here, and we have some folks that have not yet engaged with us. So what would you tell those people? What advice would you give them as we leave today?
Well, I would say, if you're in the process, if you're in a cohort, dig in. Don't leave anything, on the bench. When you go into the game, go swing and trust those people and trust the process. Don't get worried because it looks like a hot mess 3/4 of the way through. Just trust the process, okay? If you're in the midst of making change, trust your gospel, trust that this is the Jesus way, and be resolute. And if you're not in either, get in a cohort. Go to if you're a pastor or whatever, go to your board and say, I need 10 to 11 months to get ahead of you so I can lead you well. And that's what I did. And our people said, go ahead, Bill, take those. There's some things you're not going to do in the time being. Go take those months because we need you to be ahead so you can lead. And so that would be my advice.
Stephen, how about you?
Yeah, that's good. I would say if you've never been involved in a cohort, man, do it. I know sometimes people think about the money as an issue, the $1,500 for the cohort, but it is an investment in you as a leader. It's an investment in your church, and years down the road, that investment's going to look smaller and smaller. You're going to look at it and say, man, I did that, and then this is what I got out of it. And I know we all, probably have done different coaching things or paid for different things, and sometimes you get through it and you're like, oh man, that was not worth the price of admission. But this is one of those things. I think Bill would second you do it and you get on the other side of it and you think, man, that probably should have cost a lot more than what I paid for it, because the value that was put in us and that's why I continue to hang out with the Bonhoeffer, right? That's why I lead cohorts, because I want to stay connected, and it helps me stay in the game and keep my focus. So yeah, I would say get connected, jump in a cohort.
Awesome. So Stephen, we're going to show this little short video, and then I want you to come out of that and talk to us about what's coming.
Okay.
Okay.
I don't know your name. I do know what you want: to be a disciple-making leader. If you're looking for a quick fix, I can't help you. But what I do have are a particular set of skills. Skills I have acquired over a very long career. Skills that make me an answer to your prayers. If you hang up right now, that will be the end of it. I will not look for you. I will not pursue you. I will not harm you. But if you're still with me, and I hope you are, I will help you. I will train you. I will give you hope, because I turn leaders into disciple makers. And here's what I want you to do right now. I want you to get up and go to your computer. Why are you still sitting there? Get up, go to your computer. Go to the Bonhoefferproject.com. Fill out the application form, and then sit and wait by the phone. We'll call, but don't move. Wait there.
So
that
first of all, I can't be held responsible for Bill's acting skills. He lives close to Hollywood, but he never took a class. So, so what Bill is talking about is the Founders Cohort. We did this last year, and Bill's the one who started all this with 5 years ago, I believe, with one cohort, and it's grown into I don't know how many we've had over the last few years. I think last year we had 28 cohorts worldwide. And but Bill still loves to stay connected with it. And one of the ways he does that is through this Founders Cohort. It's an online cohort that Bill and I will be teaching. I'm really just there for comedic relief. Bill is the man. And it's open. It's open to anyone who wants to be a part of that. It starts February the 24th. And we're looking for somewhere around 8 people to be in that group. And I'm telling you, we went through it last year. It's all online. It's all Zoom. So you Zoom in every week, or excuse me, once a month for a 3-hour session. And then you have homework in between. And then Bill and I check in with you in between the sessions throughout the month. And honestly, it was fantastic. We met a lot of great leaders around the world, and we're seeing multiplication around the world now because of that. And my biggest selling point to people is just this: like, Bill is the Pope of discipleship. Okay, so it is what it is. I don't think there's anybody else that has written more and taught more and done a better job of talking about discipleship over the years than Bill Hall. And you have an opportunity, honestly, to sit at his feet and to listen and to take in, and for him to be a part of your process in building your discipleship flow plan. And honestly, I had that opportunity. That was incredible to have Bill Hall look at my plan and go, yeah, that works, and maybe you should tweak that. And it's a great opportunity. I would encourage you to be a part of it. Again, February 24th, so starting soon. So go to the website, register for it, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you, Stephen. We've got others happening. We're hoping that we're going to have some international folks in that one. So I'm really excited about what that could look like. And then we've got a women only starting the following weekend after that. And in March, we're going to be looking at a couples group. So a couple of different kinds of groups in that space. If you would like more information, just fill out an info request, and that comes to me. I would give you a call, and we'll check and talk, and all that you need to know, we can tell you in that process. But we would love to see some of you get involved with Bill in that group, Bill and Stephen. I think Stephen's right. He has more wisdom. He's forgotten more about discipleship than most of us know. And so just to be able to be in the space where he is and have him walking in that space with you is pretty amazing. So that is it. It is 2:00. I'm going to ask Bill Greiner if he would close us in prayer, and we will let you go.
All right. Hey, before I pray, just there's some folks sending me some private messages. I'm probably not going to get to that before we have to sign off, but I want to make sure and answer any questions that I can. So
okay.
Let's pray together. Dear Heavenly Father, we just thank you that it's amazing that you created this situation where you want to share your work with people like us. It's just remarkable, because I know what I'm like and I know what I'm capable of, and you chose to take up residence in people like me, people like us, and you gave us the recipe for the secret sauce. You gave us you brought us into the family business, and if I were God, I wouldn't have done it that way. I'd have done it on my own, but you work through people like us. Father, I just ask that you would create a resolve in us to be disciple making leaders. And if there are those that are thinking about, but maybe a little afraid, maybe can I handle that cohort? Can I? Yes. If that's what God's calling you to do, the money will be there, and the ability to do the work will be there. So, Father, I just ask that you would bless and encourage those that are thinking about making that step. And Father, we just ask that you would each one of us who's listening, that we would get to see those third and fourth plus generations, that we would get the joy of celebrating that. Father, we just thank you and we praise you, and we thank you for the Bonhoeffer Project and them being a catalyst to help us to do what's in our hearts that you placed to do. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. And thank you guys for coming. We appreciate your time.